How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Coach, a guy like Isaac, Ike, who's been a veteran around the league and has been a core special teamer in a lot of different places, even here before, with his role changing on defense, becoming a little bit more of a staple on special teams. Just what does it say about a veteran like that embracing role changes and things like that?
Yeah, I think it says a lot about him as a person, as a man, right? We were super excited when we signed him back here, knowing that his role may be on defense, it may be on special teams, it may be a combination of both. And, unfortunately, he got nicked up a little bit, so we missed a couple weeks. And then when he came back, that was, a really good thing for the special teams part of it, as you saw from the game there, the things he's able to do, not only go play gunner and make impactful plays, but the other part of it is, on kickoff coverage or on the pump block return where he's able to hold up their gunners. He does a really good job. And so he's an ultimate pro. He's a great person. So I'm really excited that we have him and he's back playing special teams for us.
I mean, are there, nobody named, but just like, are there examples of guys that you have to kind of get excited, like help them get excited about of being a veteran and playing special teams? And is I kind of the example, the opposite of that?
That's a good question. I don't know. In my time here, I don't think that there's ever been someone that I've had to pump up or get excited about playing. I mean, that's just kind of, the expectation of what it is. If, the guys that are playing a lot of snaps on defense may only play on one special team in a certain phase, right? Like Justin Reed's playing all those plays, and now he's on field goal block, or, Jonas Sanker has been playing on kickoff for us. So those guys that are playing a lot of offensive, defensive snaps, they may just have a limited role on special teams there. And then the guys that aren't playing that many offensive and defensive snaps, they need to have a role on special teams. Or in all honesty, they really do no good on game day when you bring 48 if he's not contributing to it. So I think guys understand that. I think, Kellen and the front office understands that. Like, we need to bring guys to the game that if they're not having a significant role in offense or defense, they're able to help us win games by playing on special teams.
When a new guy gets added, like, what is kind of the process of identifying what they can do and how you're going to use them?
When a new guy...
Like, if they sign someone
today,
what's your process?
My first process is I go to the computer, and nowadays you can go on the PFF Ultimate, right? And I just type their name in, and I see what have they played in the NFL, preseason or regular season, right? And then if it's a guy who hasn't done much, I'll go back to my draft notes. We probably had evaluated him during the draft process, and if not, I'll go look at his college clips and try to evaluate what does he do well, and what areas of need or who's not coming to the game now that the new player is up, and how can we make him be successful. I think I try to do my best with all of our players. I try to put them in positions on special teams to accentuate things that they do well. I very rarely try to put them in a situation where I know they don't do something well and ask them to do that. I don't think that's fair to the player or the team.
In the situations where you need to go back to college tape and actually watch clips, how often or how long do you need to watch before you know this guy can do this?
Honestly, it usually doesn't take very long when you're talking about coverage. You can either see that a guy can run and has spatial awareness and understands leverage to be able to get the ball carrier on the ground or out of bounds, or he really doesn't. And then that's where it becomes a little bit of an issue, and it becomes a challenge because it takes time to teach that. And when guys come in and they haven't been a part of the OTAs or the training camp where you do all those specific drills that you're trying to teach that are going to be applicable for the season, it becomes more challenging.
Do you use PFF Ultimate for other aspects of your job, or is it just to watch? Like, how do you kind of get involved with that, or what made you embrace that rather?
I've started using it for the draft process. It just makes it so much easier when you're trying to evaluate the college players, and now it's become sophisticated enough for NFL players as well that, like, I may go in there and I may go want to look at a couple certain things. Like, it makes it easy. For example, you can do it by coach, by player. Like, I can go in there and I can find all the trick plays that coordinator X, Y, or Z has run, and maybe that was 10 years ago, so that when we go through the gadgets and things like that, that we want to make sure that we're prepared for, it makes that part of it easier. So I do use it in a bunch of different areas.
I know easy answer to this, but how do you replace that plus player in the return game after training sheet?
Yeah, look, it's a challenge, right? And like you said, a plus player, somebody that's been very good for us there. But we do knowing that things can happen, or knowing like last season where she got hurt, you have other guys that are in your building that are repping that and practicing it, every day, whether it's off the jugs or during our punt periods and things like that. So, we got several guys on our roster, on our active roster, for example, guys who have done it before, Ugo or Cooksey. And then we have some guys, on the practice squad as well. Jaden Price, who's now here, or you take a look at Pettis, who's around as well, or Ronnie Bell is another guy that we signed to the practice squad. So I think we have some options there that it's going to be a great opportunity for somebody to go take advantage of.
What went into putting Rashid back on kickoff returns this past week?
There was a combination of things. One, obviously, what they had been doing with the knuckleballs and that sort of thing. Our priority was, let's get two guys back there that have excellent hands and can field the ball, and then be able to go get return yardage after that. There had been too many examples of guys misplaying, misjudging, not fielding the ball, and all of a sudden teams are starting inside their 10-yard line. So that was the biggest area of that part of it.
Were you surprised to see them kicking the ball into the end zone as much as they did? It's just because they came in with pretty good numbers from a coverage perspective.
Yeah, they did. Was I surprised? Honestly, no. I kind of, early in the week, I'd said to Kellen, I think after the first time they see that Sheed and Taysom are back there, I think they're going to say that, we'd rather just kick the ball in the end zone. That was my personal opinion of what I thought they'd do.
Justin said that he got past the kick on the one that he almost blocked. What did you see on that play?
He did. Look, here's what I think happened. I don't know for sure. I think Justin's been a guy throughout his career in that game that has such great get-off on there. And in his past, I think he's looked at the operation. So, like, sometimes, when you see the holders this or they tap the ground, he's done that in the past. And I think they thought he was doing that. So I think that they were trying to go on like a double hand tap. And I think the snapper snapped it on the first one. That's why you saw the kicker so slow to approach it. And, the normal get-off on a field goal is like 1.3, and he was like 1.7 something. So for Justin, his normal path is I got to go 3, drive, crank, and lay out. And he did that, and it was so slow, he was actually by the ball. All good? Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
So what was maybe the biggest challenge that was presented going up against the Rams this past weekend, particularly in the passing game of Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, Ross, they they had a really good plan. I thought they executed at a high level. They're a tough team to cover. I mean, when Matthew's playing like he is right now, and you've got 2 first-team All-Pro receivers, and one of them going to the Hall of Fame, and first-team All-Pro back. It's a tough group all the way around, and so. I thought that there were plenty of good downs in the game, but then, there was too many stretches where, they beat us, and I think that gap of plays in there is going to be a great learning experience for our guys in terms of where we need to go with our game as a unit. But we definitely need to build on that performance and learn where we need to go here against Carolina.
They use a lot of 3 tight end sets, which isn't something we're used to seeing from Sean McVay, but obviously he's ticked that up a bit this year. Just what kind of challenge does that present to an opposing defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a part of their plan based on how the game was going when they got the lead. But yeah, anytime you add gaps in the run game, it helps you. That wasn't a primary part of their game plan against us. They're still an 11 team. But again, it's just him running all his normal plays just out of a different personnel grouping. That's what good coaches do. I think that group is going to give them a lot of variety down the stretch.
If you're trying to establish like a new culture, come into a new place, get it going how you want it to go, like what are the benchmarks you're looking at beyond like just yardage points? Like what's the stuff, the intangible things that maybe everyone doesn't see that you're looking for and looking to grow and like foster so that you got the foundation you want?
Yeah, I think the silent tape is what our culture is all about, and I think our silent tape through this stretch of season, we're proud of that in terms of how physical we play, the effort that we play with, the physicality on blocks, the way that we tackle, and I think that's on the tape against some of the premier teams in the league. I think that we have played a premium offensive schedule so far, and I think that our group has put a lot of quality on the film from a style of play standpoint, and then I think. From just a scheme perspective, what you're looking for is, are you executing the scheme? Are there mental errors all over the tape, or are you solid and they're beating you? And I think that we've been able to do that. You don't see a bunch of, catastrophic errors on tape where you're turning people loose and you're giving them easy plays, getting easy first downs, easy explosions, easy touchdowns. And so I think that we can definitely build on that. And I think our group's playing together. And I think the other thing is you hope that your group is improving and they're developing. And I think that we can say that is true as well. So, again, great opportunity against Carolina to keep it going. We've got a good group of guys. And, again, last week, it's going to force us to respond this week. So it's going to be a good opportunity for our guys.
What's made Rico Dowdle a good fit in
Yeah, he's playing as well as anybody in the league right now at the running back position. We've played against a lot of quality backs this year, and he's playing as well as any of them. The physicality, the decisiveness, I think he's a great fit for how they're trying to run the ball, but he's bringing a lot of personality on the contact, breaking a lot of tackles, running through a lot of quality players, and so he's definitely given them a style of play. And he's made their whole offense better, and they've also got a quality back in Chuba Hubbard, so they've got a very good 1-2 punch.
You see some of those checkpoints you're talking about, like with other teams rebuilding across the league, like the Panthers, for instance, they've been trying to rebuild for a couple of years now. Like, do you see those improvements across the board?
For our team?
For Carolina specifically, some of those same checkpoints you were talking about, where you measure for your team, do you kind of see similarities and
Yeah, I think any team that's going through a new phase, a new coaching staff, a new build, so to speak, you're trying to, I think to Nick's point, you're trying to establish your culture first and your style of play, and then as you onboard, more of the people that fit what you do, then some of those other things can take shape. And I think every build's different. Sometimes you hit it right away, sometimes kind of in the middle, or sometimes later on. But you just want to make sure that you're playing the right way. And I think that that's what we're trying to focus on, certainly on the defensive side, is playing the right way and making sure we're playing team defense. And, I think our group has done a good job of that all season, of playing the way that we want to play. And then if there are issues that we've had throughout the season, name a game or name a stretch where we've had to correct things, you want to make sure that you're making the adjustments. And so I think when you're brand new, that's really important that you are meeting those benchmarks as you go.
You've worked with some really good defensive tackles throughout your career. What is unique about Brian Brzee in your eyes?
Yeah, I think probably his ability to play on all three downs. I think you don't have to take him off the field. There's some guys that are really good at stopping the run. There's some guys that are really good at rushing the passer, but I think that he can play on all three downs, and he can play with some versatility in where he can line up. But I think that probably what stands out for an interior D lineman is his pass rush ability. He can win in one-on-one pass rush, and I think that, that's hard to find in the NFL. Most of the rush production in this league comes outside. So when you can find an inside pass rusher, it is unique, and it's something that is an advantage for you. So he's been a big asset for our defense. I think he's improved. in huge ways in the run game. And I think that in the pass rush game, he's been one of our top assets in pass rush. He's had a lot of quick winners. He continues to improve. And excited to see him continue to take his game where it can go.
Is there stuff you can do to like develop leadership, or is that just kind of like inherent in players and they kind of like emerge on their own?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think it's a combination. I definitely think that you can foster it and develop it. There's some guys who, potentially they've had a good upbringing in it, in terms of where they've been before, whether it was college, high school, whatever. Maybe it's their family, but I think, anytime a person, sort of demonstrates the ability to affect others, you definitely want to tap into that. And some guys, it's different than others. I was around Khalil Mack, who was very soft-spoken, and his example was the leadership. And everybody followed him, and it was his example, though. And then there's some other guys that talk a little bit more, and that are a little bit more active. And so everybody does it their own way, but what you try to do is those guys that can impact others, you want to pour into them as much as you can, so that they can see, their example, how impactful it can be.
Do you ever see guys go from being the leader that leads by example, and then they kind of, something happens and all of a sudden they become the guy that leads with their voice? Khalil
Mack's a good example, because as when I got him in LA with the Chargers, he was a much different guy. I was first with him in 2018, and he was 27 and on top of the world. And then when we traded for him, he had a family and he'd gone through a lot more experiences. So he was a lot more ready to lead, I think with his words, and more comfortable in doing so. So I think what you can't do is force, that. That's the type of leadership that doesn't ever hit the way you want it to, is when you're forcing something to happen. And but I think the more experiences that you get, and that doesn't mean you have to be older. You can be younger and have a ton of experience. But when that hits you, you know that you're ready for it, and then you just can let it fly.
John said last week that some of the growth you saw in Tyler was the way he'd handle like scout teams, specifically like the blitzes that you guys would handle up, like draw from your upcoming opponent. I was just wondering kind of your perspective on that, of you're trying to scheme up blitzes every week, making them look pretty, and then like seeing how he adjusted to those and maybe the value in that for.
I think any time a young quarterback can feel what it's like in a tight pocket when he's up against it, I think it's such an advantage, because that's how the NFL is in the pocket for young players, and most of the time when you're brand new to the NFL, you're seeing things for the first time. And, I think for it to happen in practice to you is an advantage before you actually have to go out there and do it. And so I thought the one thing that Tyler showed was the playmaking ability when the pocket was tight, whether he was in the pocket, climbing the pocket, or getting outside the pocket. I felt like he showed the playmaking ability against us and made some, what we would say are some major league throws, like some real NFL throws. And he made it tough on us, for his time on the scout team. So we saw the progress, and, I thought last week that you saw the same things that he had done against us in practice. You saw some of that in the game versus the Rams.
Yeah, did any of his progress or anything make you go back kind of to the drawing board of how you wanted to adjust certain blitzes or anything like that?
Well, I think that one thing that you can get is the feedback of, did he really see it? Did we give away something that kind of tipped him off to maybe change a protection, or maybe, hey, did he undress a disguise where he knew where he had a matchup and went there? Those are things that you can get the feedback from the player. And I think that those are things that he improved at every week as he saw more defense. I think he himself became more confident in what he was looking at.
What's the protocol of communication on that? Like, do you go to him and ask him those kinds of questions, or does he share that with somebody else that brings it to you?
Yeah, it's happening in real time as it's happening. Maybe it's in between a period. Maybe it's after practice and stuff like that when he's working on his own. And maybe it's during, just the meeting time, in between. But, that you're hoping for that communication both ways, because that's how you make each other better.
When you have drives in the game, obviously, coming out of halftime in particular, I think it was 10 minutes. Like, what do you think kind of led to that, and how do you assess that as you look back on, how the players handled it? Obviously, being on the field that much in the second half is a difficult scenario for defense.
Yeah, there's a couple components there. I thought we forced them to drive the field, which is a good thing. That's a positive. There weren't the rippers. They just get you beat that you can't recover from. But I thought that there were a lot of little things from a fundamental standpoint and from an execution scheme-wise that led to, a lot of those first downs. But I thought our group hung in there and still, 43 or 44 minutes, that's a bunch of ball. And I thought our guys hung tough. If you looked at the run numbers, there was 44 runs, but, 4 yards per run, you're probably going to take that. A lot in a lot of games. If that was 20 to 22 runs in a game at that same clip, you'd be saying we had a really good day at the office. So I thought that was positive. But I think that where we need to improve is how we start the games. And then when we get into an advantage situation within those drives, which there were plenty of them, we need to be able to knock them down, especially when you're playing against a special quarterback and a special group of guys. A 2nd and 15, you got to keep that advantage. You can't make that 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. We had a couple of those in there. We had a big 3rd and 8 after we got that 3 and out. Then we get them to a 3rd and 8, and we don't get off the field when we were in a kind of a prime coverage to do so. So I think our guys are seeing those margins there when you're playing against the special people, that's within our control. And I think that our guys will learn a lot from it, like I said, and be ready to bounce back this week.
When you're kind of like scouting for ideas, do you look at teams that are like structurally similar to yours, or is it like all kinds of different schemes, or like what's kind of your process for like watching the league?
Yeah, I think, we really try to watch offenses, more than anything, because you learn a lot more, I think, by what you have to defend as opposed to looking at another defense. I think more innovation comes that way because it tells you what you need to be doing, as opposed to, sort of looking at another defense. It's like, no, let the offense tell us what we need to design. At least that's the way I approach it. There are some guys, that I'm a fan of in this league for sure. There's plenty of defenses that play at a high level, and we do that too. And there's plenty of examples of it. Certainly I was with Vic, and there's some other guys that I've coached with that I'm a big fan of that we coach together. Or now they're doing it their own way. But I think more than anything, you got to study offensive scheme, to truly, I think, innovate and take your own defensive scheme to where it can go. And so.
That you kind of come up with.
Yeah, that's right.
The offense guys are the thieves that watch everyone and steal.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
Stafford's time to throw last week was a little bit longer than his normal season average. I'm wondering how you kind of process that. Is that kind of the goal to have him keep it longer, or like Cam said, he gets the ball out so fast, the
he does.
Gonna just kind of.
Yeah, there's a lot of keepers in there. There's a lot of play pass, and when you're looking at true drop back. That's much different than, they're not factoring that in to the average time to throw. If you just isolate the drop back, non-play action, non-keeper, it's going to be a lot less than that. Going into the game, he's one of the top ball out quarterbacks. He's a guy that kills pressure because of that, because the ball's out. So, I think basically, where we fell short in the game was our first drive wasn't good enough, and I think that set us into it really disrupted our rhythm. And like I said, we had our opportunities to get control of that game in those following possessions, and we just didn't do it. And it was a lot of little things. And they were operating at a premium level. He hit a bunch of throws like that throw to Puka. It's a major league throw. We're right there. And he made a good play, and so did Puka. But I think that we saw how sharp you need to be. We need to be sharper all the way around, coaching and playing to beat that team.
Particularly on that 10-minute drive, can those things be a product of being on the field for a long time and getting tired and falling into bad habits, or is it something more like you saw it on practice tape and it needs to be corrected?
Yeah, Catherine, I think you make a great point. I think it's both. There's a reality of being on the field for a long stretch, and but then there's that part of being a competitor where there's you're out, there's no excuse. I think that our guys saw where we had control, that we could have affected, whether it was our technique or the execution of the scheme, where we needed to be better, and that's the truth. We needed to play better in that game. In that 10-minute drive, I think our guys hung in there. But in order to make the plays that get you off the field or get the takeaway that turns the momentum, we needed to be sharper, and we're all in it together and doing better this week for sure.
What are some of the challenges that Carolina presents as you look ahead to them?
Yeah, I think Dave's doing a really good job tying the run game together. I think that, both backs are having prolific years. I think their O-line and their tight end group does a really good job blocking. They're definitely in sync. These runners aren't doing it on their own. They're doing it with the help of a group that's tied together. And then I think at the quarterback position, I think that Bryce is a point guard. He's a playmaker. They've got a lot of young weapons that are new to the NFL, a lot of young players that have really dynamic quality as a group. And so, they went into Green Bay on the road and just had a huge win and played the right way in order to get it done. So they're playing with a lot of confidence. And right now, I think as an offensive team, they've created an identity, and that's a compliment. All right, guys, take care.
Going.
How are you?
Good.
So with some changes, with the trade deadline and everything, how do you go about approaching some of those shifts and identifying, who's going to be kind of the next man up, if you will?
Sure. I think you already kind of had a depth chart. You kind of know who fit in where, who's spelling who in certain situations. So obviously, without Sheed and Trevor here now, the guys just have to step up and play more.
Do you look at, I Colin said yesterday that, with Shaheed's snaps, that it provides opportunity for multiple players. Is that something that you look at, all together as well?
Sure. Every time we go into a game, we're game planning for certain guys and certain spots, certain situations. And now, when Sheed's not a part of that, you just have to redistribute that amongst other guys.
How have you seen Brandon Staley progress? And, if he is one of those guys, just what makes him ready for the moment?
Real intelligent guy, and that's one of the things we really liked about him, his size, his intelligence. We got him here, obviously a little minor setback, some injury things, and, really excited about the opportunity. Now, obviously, he'll take on a much bigger role.
Was having a limited role, was anything he was doing that was preventing him from staying in the field? Like, he just needed to learn more or anything there?
Well, I think obviously, when you first get to an organization, when you're coming in new and everything's different, there is going to be a steeper learning curve. And then there's also the flow of how things have already been going. You kind of go through training camp, you try and look at different guys in different situations, see who fits and does what well, and these type of things. And then, all of a sudden now you have a new piece. So it's trying to figure out how that piece fits. And, kind of same thing I talked about earlier with Taysom. You don't really know until you get him and you start doing things.
Is there anything about his approach to the game that stands out? It looks like he blocks hard and everything, even though there's not a ton of targets. He's still maximum effort and bought in and all that.
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of sports where guys don't necessarily show up in the stat line, but that they play an important role in their system for their team. And I think he's one of those guys. Obviously hasn't had the big breakout game catch-wise, but you look at the things he's done when he's been in the football game, and it's been productive for us on offense.
After going over the film and sitting down with Tyler and talking through the performance, what do you take away from his first start?
Well, obviously it was, a game that got away from us a little bit, sooner than we had expected or anticipated. But there's a lot of good things in there, and there's a lot of things to improve on. But the one thing was it wasn't too big for him. And that's a dang good defense he played against. You tip your hat to their pass rush. They got some real dudes up front. Like I said, going into the game, I know Giff and his guys are going to come after the passer. And so a lot of positives. Obviously, his first time out there. And so, I think you're really excited to see him go get the second one this week.
His touchdown throw, he said that was kind of the third read to Juwan. How did you, when you look back at that, how did you feel like he handled that situation in general?
one of the real positives. When you get down in the red zone, obviously the field shrinks, decision-making becomes critical, things happen fast. And, for him to get through that progression the way he did, to get to Juwan, as we say, when you look at the play, that's the guy that we always say, well, throw it to him, but that guy never really is open. And Juwan did a nice job getting open, Ty did a nice job finding him.
How do you guys get off to faster starts?
Oh, you thought you were going to give me the answer to that? No. Obviously, been a point of emphasis for us. We have not done well there, and we know we fell short of where we want to be. Obviously, it's a commitment from the coaching staff. We got to do a better job of getting our guys the best plays early in the game, and we got to do a better job of executing. Obviously, you can't start the game, especially the way we started it with 3 and outs, and 4 of our first 5 series are 3 and outs when you go out there to LA, I believe, and you can't start games like that and expect to win in the National Football League. So we've got to be better. We know it. We're working at it, and we just got to get there.
Is it surprising or disappointing? You spend all week formulating a game plan. You feel good about the script, presumably, and to see it not translate, what kind of goes through your head?
Well, you have to take each play and isolate that play, because you can't just say, well, we're not starting fast. Well, okay, what happened? Well, we had a penalty in this series, or we had a lost yardage play here, or we didn't line up right, whatever those may be, or this wasn't a very good play call against that defense. There's a number of different reasons, and so if we had the exact answer to that right now, we would do it. Just so as I would say, it's a point of emphasis for us. We know we need to start faster. Our guys are aware of it. We talk about it every week, and we just got to keep working.
You mentioned with Taysom and Vele, you don't really know until they're out there. Was there anything that you maybe learned about Tyler, or was further confirmed by seeing him out there in a starting situation?
Not really. I think it was what we expected. Like I said, very comfortable with where he was and how he had prepared himself for that moment. And like I said, some really good things. Obviously, there's some things we'll continue to improve on. But like I said, positive performance by him.
Just obviously Trevor being traded, does that kind of signal some confidence in Dylan kind of stepping in and taking over in that role?
We've had a lot of confidence in Dylan, and obviously he played earlier in the season and played well when he played. So I'm excited about him getting his opportunity.
What are some of the challenges that you're looking at up ahead with the Carolina defense?
They're stout up front. Obviously, Brown, he's a really, really good player. And they got Horn, at the boundary corner. They're a great player. They do a good job, They always do a good job in disguising their scheme. They're drop from the sky team. So, they do a good job, hold and make it look like shell. They drop into single high, and their blitz package on third downs it's challenging. So there's a lot of things that we've got to prepare for. Ultimately, it's going to be about us, and we've talked about that. It's about us and our execution.
Penning being traded and Falaga cert, McCoy cert, you're missing 3 starters on the offensive line. I'm just wondering what you make of that, and what have you kind of seen of the offensive line to, despite the challenges, what do you make of that group?
Well, I'll say this. Obviously, throughout the season and where we're at, we're not satisfied with where we are from a win-loss standpoint. But, strong majority of the game, our guys have competed very, very hard and very well. The scoreboard hasn't gone our way, but it hasn't been for lack of effort. Now, there's been some times where we didn't, play with this type of play style that we want to be known for. But for the most part, our guys have played extremely hard. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's next man up. We're going to go play with our style of play and compete.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.